Welcome to another episode of the Commute Me Podcast, a conversational podcast exploring the stories, insights, and strategies behind learning-centered communities. Our mission is to inspire listeners by highlighting individuals who are shaping the future of how people come together to learn, grow, and thrive. We're excited to welcome Enna Jimenez, a technology executive, engineering operations strategist, and ecosystem connector with more than 30 years of experience helping organizations improve quality, efficiency, and speed to market. From starting her career as an intern to leading a global team of more than 200 people as a VP, Enna brings a unique perspective on leadership, operational excellence, and relationship building across both the corporate and nonprofit worlds. Alongside her work with engineering organizations, Enna is also deeply involved in the Latinx and Dominican American community here in Boston. Enna, it's so awesome to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Farhan, thank you so much for this invitation. It's exciting to be here with you.
I'm so excited to touch on all the different aspects of your background. We had an awesome chat a couple of months ago, so it's great to reconnect. And your journey from being an intern at an organization to eventually leading a global team, let's start there, because a lot of the folks that I've brought on the show, they have had really interesting journeys that have taken them from the mailroom to the boardroom kind of scenario, as we like to say. What was your journey like, Anna? If you could take us back to your origin story and some of those inflection points that really made you who you are today.
So I'm proud to have been born in Puerto Rico. My parents are both from Dominican Republic, and when we were young, we all moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and so Boston is home for me. But within Boston home, my parents made sure that we were very connected to our heritage and our culture. So Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, the community, the food, the culture were things that were staples in our home from a very young age. And so they instilled in us this desire and this ability to be service-oriented individuals and to take in people who needed a home or to stay for a night or sometimes a couple of months, right? They would stay at our house, and the ability to always just give back in whatever way we can. My mom always said that she did not have the ability to graduate from college, and so she always said that her kids would go and graduate from college. She didn't know how. She didn't know the process in Boston. She didn't know how we were going to pay for it, and she didn't know how we were going to get through it, right? But she did say that all of her kids would go and graduate from college, and we did. So I went to Simmons University, where I majored in computer science and Spanish, and didn't really quite know what I wanted to do with that career. People ask me, Enna, why did you major in Spanish? Honestly, it was just because I was taking so many electives that the Spanish teacher was like, well, you might as well declare it a major and get some credit for all of these Spanish courses that you've been taking, you know? So from there, I senior professor during senior year, I had a connection at a software company. And so she connected me there for my first internship. And, you know, that was really the start of learning a whole new world, right? I went from being in a community where I was surrounded by people that looked like me to a university that was predominantly white girls, right? Women in this university. I'm trying to navigate and find my way as a Black Latina woman to then technology, right? And to a career that was predominantly a male-dominated space, right? And so I still had to sort of figure out how to find my voice, how to make my presence be known, and just figure out the path that I wanted for myself. I didn't really know where I was going in my career. You know, the first few years after college, you're just trying to get a job, figure things out. But about, 7, 8 years in, I kind of looked at what I was doing in the quality assurance, automation, software development, sort of that whole engineering space. And I kind of fell in love with it, you know? And that's when I kind of decided, oh, wait a minute, I can make a career out of this. And so I actually became very intentional about creating a career in quality assurance. Quality assurance is a space where normally people come through. It's a pass-through, right? You're looking to become a developer. You're looking to become a project manager. You're looking to go anywhere, but rarely people stay in that space and make that a career. But I did. And so from that point on, I gained a lot of experiences. I worked at a number of different companies, financial services, product companies, banking, education. And so that allowed me to really become industry agnostic, but understand the whole concept of software development life cycle in all kinds of organizations. So that was what then allowed me to catapult my career as I then moved up the management ladder, and then from manager, senior manager, director, vice president, and eventually, 2 steps away from the CEO as a business transformation and head of global QA. It's been an amazing career, 30 plus years, technology, and it's been a career with amazing, wonderful days and moments and milestones accomplished, as well as some pretty hard, difficult, challenging moments where I kind of question, is this where I really want to be at? So I use that as my story, right? To be able to talk about how did I, as a Black Latina woman who had no idea what she wanted to do with her life, how did I get to really navigating corporate America and breaking a whole bunch of glass ceilings and accomplishing so much?
A lot to reflect on there, Enna, and 2 questions come to mind right off the bat. The first question for me, as somebody who kind of lived an opposite lifestyle, in the sense that I was the one person who wasn't Caucasian in the community that I grew up in. So I was always the other, kind of right off the bat. And when I went to college, I was able to see people that looked like me for the first time, which is interesting. That's a cool reflection. Mm-hmm. But the other piece of it, I guess the first question is, what kept you going when you found yourself being in a context or in an environment that was so unfamiliar to you to begin with? What was the source of your motivation? What kept you energized and ready to move forward and accomplish?
I know for a fact that my mom has always been a role model for me, and I saw someone strive for so much in life. When she didn't know English, she took classes here in Boston to learn the language. She had all kinds of jobs. She worked with students who had disability, but she always knew that she wanted to be a business owner. Throughout the beginning years here in Boston, even though she was not a business owner, she had a goal. And then once she had the opportunity to buy a business, her dream business, which is a bridal store, she had no money. But she said, I'm going to own that business. And she did. And it was a family business. And I saw all the challenges, all the issues. But no matter what, my mom would always pray every single day, and she would say, God will lead me, and if this is where I'm meant to be, he will make it happen. And so I saw a woman who was resilient, and because I saw all she was doing to make sure that her kids had what we had, I felt like I had to continue. I couldn't give up because she had gone through so much to make sure that I could be where I was at, that I knew I would do her a disservice. Like, it would be like dishonoring my mom, my parents, right, if I didn't follow through. And so in those hard moments, in those moments where you're questioning, am I in the right place? Am I doing what I should be doing? Oh my God, I should just give up. I should just quit, right? How many times do we think of that? I would say to myself, but would my mom quit? I saw her tired day in, day out, like, oh my God, when things couldn't go any worse, they would get worse, right? And I was like, well, if she could do it, so can I. And so that was my motivation. She instilled in me this sense of being a driven, passionate, resilient woman who never gives up. There's no such thing as giving up. It's not in our vocabulary. It's just not. And that was the drive that always kept me going.
What a tribute to your mom and the values that she instilled in you and your siblings. That not only the conviction element of it, but the drive and the resilience, as you mentioned. I can relate as an immigrant myself. I came to the U.S. when I was very young, but I always had parents that were pushing me. And I compared myself to, I always do. It's not an unhealthy thing to do. I think sometimes comparing yourself and what you've been able to accomplish and juxtaposing that with those that came before you or those that are around you can actually be very healthy, because it lets you understand your place in the ecosystem that you're in? What can you strive to do? How can you push the envelope a bit more? Because I'm competing against myself fundamentally in a lot of the things that at least that's my worldview, is I'm not trying to prove something to anybody else. I'm trying to prove that I can do something to myself. So that type of conviction and that drive that I think we are able to get from family members, especially our parents, is an extremely powerful motivator. And thank you for sharing that, Enna, because I know that's a very personal reflection that I think a lot of our listeners will actually be able to relate with. Let me ask you the second question that I had coming into this idea of your background and the values that you were instilled with, Enna. And that question is, did you ever crave community when you were really kind of an individual person operating in these settings as the one person that maybe had your attributes? There was nobody else that you could relate to. So initially, did you find that you needed community? And if so, how did that eventually develop?
I think we all always look for community in anything that we do. So yes, of course, I definitely did. Like I mentioned, coming from an environment where I was very much involved in the youth group in my Catholic church here in Boston. So I had that community there. So when you go into the school, university, or when you go into the workplace, you're like, okay, well, where's my community here? Where's my community there? How can I connect with people that will understand what we're talking about, right? So yes, I totally did. When I was at Simmons, they had a Black Hispanic organization for students, right? And I was like, well, this is amazing. It's great. But we have a lot of Latinas on campus, Hispanic, so why don't we have our own organization? And so I was like, well, you know what? Let's separate, let's create our own. So I became the founder, one of the founders of our Latino organization at Simmons University, which is still running through today. Then, you fast forward to now I'm in the workplace and I'm trying to find community there. Who are other people who have kind of gone into this QA space and said, I want to be in QA? Or listen, just finding women in QA was always a tough thing, right? Women in technology. So I went into these communities that exist today for women in technology because I wanted to find people that I can talk about, all the same issues that we all encounter. And so it's always important to find those groups. I would say that the community that reflected the most with me is an organization called Alpha, the Association of Latino Professionals for America. And when I met that group, that's when I finally felt like I found that community that understood who I was, embraced me as I am, and honestly helped and guided me through so many challenges and amazing moments throughout my career. So I feel like I've had multiple communities that have joined me throughout my career, and there's been those pinnacle ones with Alpha being that place that really was the center of family, community, and work all blended into one place where I knew I could just be myself and be accepted for who I was.
I think every individual, we need our tribe. We need people that we rely on, that we can share within a safe space. What is it that we're searching for? What is it that we're aspiring for? The power of community cannot be diminished, especially in today's day and age, when so much of what's happening is insular, it's more individualistic, and the genuine connections that I think people have always been able to create kind of organically are rarer today because of the way that we work and the way that we interact, and shared spaces look different and all those kinds of things. So I think the takeaway for our listeners is, find that tribe if you don't have one already. And to your point, Enna, if you don't see one, don't hesitate to build your own. And there's so many ways. I also think one of the advantages of technology, and we're going to dive into technology as kind of the next theme in the conversation, but one of the beauties of technology and interconnectedness that we all have access to is the ease by which you can actually get an idea off the ground. Not to say that you're going to immediately strike gold and you're going to be super popular, but no, it's slow and steady wins the race. You start small, you build something that is valuable, that others can really buy into, and you can create something really beautiful with that sustained effort and with that kind of collaborative spirit with the people that you bring on. So there's never been a better time to start a community if you've been contemplating one. And the call to action for folks that don't have their tribe is to go out and really make their own if they can't find their own. So I think that's very, very powerful. Let's talk a little bit about the technology angle, Enna, because You typify both worlds in such a very impactful and very powerful way. The community connection and what you've done to build such a strong presence there, but also your career and the ability that you've been able to have such a great impact in the technology ecosystem. When we look at how technology has evolved over the last 3 decades and how teams are performing, how teams are becoming more agile or more cutting edge, what are some of the overall trends that maybe you've seen over the course of your career that you can reflect upon? And where do you see technology and how people operate in technology changing in the next decade or so? How does the human technology connection look to you moving forward?
Well, yes, Farhan, that is a really great question and kind of encompasses a lot, right? So if you think about my career, right, 30 plus years in corporate America, and I've seen, I started coding in Fortran, but that's what I started coding in. And then using all of these different, tools, Java, HTML, right, Visual, C+. I mean, there's so many coding tools that I used back early in my career. But you have seen the methodology sort of evolve. Back when I started, there was the concept of a waterfall methodology. And then you kind of moved into a scrum fall methodology. And for those who might be following that, maybe like, what is she talking about? Right? It's just processes and how you do all of your requirements at one time. And then you move to the design. And once all that gets signed off, then you move to development. And once it all gets fully developed, then you move to testing. And once it all gets fully tested, then you can actually think about rolling out. That could take anywhere from 12 to 18 months, sometimes 2 years to go through just to release something that you created requirements 2 years ago. And they realized that was taking too long. So that's where the term agile came in. How can we do things faster and go to market more timely? And so this concept of agile, well, let's break things down into modules, into components. Let's do the requirements, do the design, develop and do the coding, and let's that module, get that one done. Then you move on to the next module, and then you move on to the next module. So instead of waiting 2 years to complete something, you're now able to complete things chunks at a time, maybe a couple of months, 3 months. You're able to release different products. So that was able to kind of move us from this waterfall methodology to this agile methodology. That's why I spent the larger part of my career in this agile methodology, and most importantly, helping organizations implement these agile methodologies. I think what you're seeing now is with the whole rise of AI and ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and Perplexity and all of these different tools, was how can we do all the work that we needed to do. There's work that we did that is just like grunt work, that is work that you just repeat over and over and over again, that you can just automate. That you can just be like, hey, you know what, Claude, ChatGPT, do this because I always do this on every single release. Perfect. And now you can now take your brain uses, your experience of working on different applications to now actually apply that to the work that you need to do. So I think the evolution is allowing us to get to a place where, look, people can release stuff in hours, right? You can create a product, you can have ChatGPT build something for you, create a website, and it's already live in minutes, right? So we've gone from, remember where I started, something could take you as much as 2 years, and now you're up to hours. I think the part that people need to realize is that evolution and change is important. It's important in our world, but it doesn't mean that we're going to not still be needed. The example that I always use is there was a point in time that I vividly remember when you had to make a phone call, someone would patch your call. You would pick up the phone and you say, I want to call XYZ, and someone would patch you from one thing to the other so you can make that call, right? There was an operator on the other end patching calls, right? And all of us had landlines, and that was the only way you could communicate. There's no such thing as call waiting for a period of time. You had to hang up the phone and then, someone else could get a hold of you, right? But now we have smartphones. Now you're able to talk on a computer. And so we have all evolved, we have changed, but we're applying our knowledge and our experience to still being able to do the work and still being able to impact the world. So I think about where we're going to be. Listen, if you're able to use ChatGPT and Claude to build a website and do all these things, imagine all of the amazing work we're going to be able to create going forward. Imagine all the programs, the offices that are still paper based. There's so much paper being used in the world that all of that is going to go away. It doesn't mean that those roles and people aren't going to be needed. It just means that we're going to become much more efficient in what we do. So I consider this transition. Change is welcome. Change is good. For those people that embrace it, that learn, that educate themselves, they're going to be great. And for those that are like, oh my God, I can't do this, they're going to struggle a little bit. The final thing I'll say, Farhan, is as advanced as we are in our smartphones and all of that, there are people today whom I know that still use a flip phone, that cannot in their wildest dreams understand how to use an Apple, an iPhone, or a Samsung. They would get lost, right? So these are folks who have not been able to evolve with the world because for them change was hard. That's the way I look about it. That's the way I think about it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Enna. And I've actually been involved in digital literacy projects before. So to that last point, some of it is fear of the unknown, but some of it is also just genuine lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding how this can practically impact something that they're looking to achieve in their day-to-day. And I think that's really what makes AI somewhat of an unknown fear for a lot of folks, is they see it as something that is so disconnected to their day-to-day reality that they don't have a use case that they can use, that they can, basically take advantage of, because they see it as something that will never impact them. So in the work that I do, I try to always educate my partners to let them know this is such a useful tool, and that is all it is. It's a tool. It's a means to an end. You're not going to surrender your abilities as a creative human being to AI. That's not going to happen. But these rote tasks, these manual things that we've spent years and years spinning cycles and getting bored of certain work because of how uninteresting they are, AI can take that burden. And AI can help us realize our human potential, free up our time to do things that fundamentally make us more interconnected and build those stronger communities, ideally. At least that's the vision that I try to impart. For somebody who is starting out right now in technology, let's say somebody who's just curious, how do I get into this world of technology? Where do I start? How do I build those building blocks? What kind of advice would you give to them, given your arc of experience over the last 3 decades?
I think the key thing is you have to be curious. You have to want to know. You have to have attention to detail. You have to have the mindset of process, right? These are all key skills that are very important if you want to be in technology. But in technology specifically, right, you have to want to dig deeper. If you're a project manager, you need to fully understand everything from the beginning to the end in order to drive that project. If you want to get into development, you have to thoroughly understand how you're going to build something, thinking of all the potential issues that can occur. Who are your customers? How are they going to use this product, right? If you're going into quality assurance, into testing space, right, you have to be able to think about, how am I going to thoroughly test this, pretending to be every single user that may want to use this, removing any biases from it, right? Which is very, very important. And so in all of that, attention to detail is very, very important. Having the ability to be creative, having the ability to kind of role playing, position yourself in the seat of the person that is using these products is going to be really important. And then having the open mind to just learn and always learn. I think what's allowed me to have been successful in my career is that I knew I could never stop learning. Right? Every year I learned something new. I read a new book. I learned a new tool. I always sat with my developers, as much as they were like, and I don't have time for you. But I was like, but I need to learn, right? And a lot of my developers that I worked with throughout the years were super gracious with me and they taught me a lot. And because of that, I was able to understand everyone's role. So understanding everyone's role in a team is really important. Oftentimes, especially those in the early career, they're like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And then they kind of tunnel vision and focus only on that. And the problem with that is that they don't realize how their role fits into the larger picture, right? And sometimes you make decisions or you're not sure how decisions should be made when you don't have the larger view. So the ability to go deep, the ability to stay up high and be strategic is really important. So I know there's a lot of different things that I share, but anyone that's coming in new into technology, I think really needs to develop those type of skills.
One more, Enna, which is don't be afraid of failure.
Oh my God.
Because
yes.
if somebody had told that to me when I was 18, I would have been in a different place by now in my career. I would have taken different decisions because the fear of failure, I think AI in its perfection, which I'm putting in air quotes for folks that are listening, it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all. It's training off of data, and data is not perfect, right? So we shouldn't be kidding ourselves at all about any of this being set in stone, because it's not. Everything is making mistakes. We are all making mistakes. Machines are, AI is, we are, right? So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to ask questions, ask for help, make mistakes. I think now more than ever before, we need that humanness in what we do, because it shows that there are imperfections which make us who we are. And that's how we learn and that's how we improve.
I would just add, Farhan, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, you know what, I actually don't know. Because that humility actually opens you up for a bigger learning opportunity, right? So we're so quick to say, yeah, I know it, I know it. You don't need to tell me. It's like, no. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I actually don't know that. Would you mind educating me? Can you let me know where I can read more about it? Because that actually opens you up to truly learning and taking advantage of someone else who is trying to mentor you and sponsor you. So yes, all of that is absolutely correct.
More often than not, and one other quick reflection I'll make is people are so willing to help when you ask. I think, at least in my personal experience, being afraid to ask was just, I was doing nobody a favor by doing that. I was holding myself back by doing that, right? But, 9 times out of 10, when I actually embraced that vulnerability, I don't know. Please help me. Can you show me the next step? Or can you show me where I can find more? 9 times out of 10, people would go above and beyond. Yeah, sure I will, So they, the people respect that curiosity. People respect that urge and that thirst for knowledge, right? Or that thirst to know something beyond what you know. And I think fundamentally it stems from that acknowledgement that, hey, I don't have the answer. Because the person that does, or the person who's willing to then be that mentor or be that resource, it almost fulfills their need to be a part of the equation, which they wouldn't have even activated had they not known that you need the help. So it's a way to enable both sides, the person seeking knowledge and as well as the person who can give that knowledge or guidance. And this actually dovetails to my next question, Enna, which is, I'm going to go back to the human side of the equation a little bit, because with AI and with emerging technologies and with how workforces are being, molded to be more agile and be more performance-based in their work, I think being a connector between groups, between individuals, between teams is a soft skill that is going to probably define the workplace for the coming however many years. In your experience, I see you as a natural connector. I see you as somebody who builds bridges between communities of very different stripes. What are your reflections or thoughts around building connections, being that bridge builder? What has helped you in that process? Where are places that you were really successful in maybe making bridges and maybe not as successful? What's your take on being that connector?
Well, you're talking my language now because, I've always said that people have called me in the past kind of like the social butterfly because I can walk into any space and just work the room and meet everyone. I can walk into a room that I didn't know anybody, and by the time I leave, I would have known half of the room, right?
That's a superpower, Anna.
Because
That's
I'm
a
just
superpower.
but I genuinely love meeting people and getting to know people. And so it comes a bit easy for me to be able to meet folks. But building bridges is really important, right? Like I mentioned earlier, when coming up in the technology space, realizing that there wasn't a lot of women that looked like me in manager roles. Like I couldn't go to look up to say, oh, here's a vice president who's a Black Latina woman that has gone through so much and is now a senior leader. I didn't have those role models. And so I sought to be that for someone else. Right. And so I often would make sure that I would hire lots of women in my group because I wanted to make sure that they had opportunities. I made sure that there was equity in salaries within those in my group because, again, who else was looking out for the women coming up? And so those are the things that I strive to do. And in doing that, you build community. You build these bridges that allows you to connect those who may not be aware of what's available to them with those that do have a lot of knowledge and information. And so, one of the things that I always am very proud is that for my team, those that work for me, I always make sure that I sent them to conferences, that I created the opportunity for professional development. I said to them, work is important. And I know we have projects and I know we have deadlines and I know we have things we need to get done. But for me, it is a huge priority that you also develop yourself individually. There's been several times in my career that I've worked myself out of a job. And I proudly say that. That means I hired a team. I developed a team. They were so great that I was not needed anymore because I developed a team that was self-sustainable without me. That is a proud moment. People might not look at it that way. I do, because for me, I do nothing by hoarding all this information in my head and not developing my team. Right. And so that was super important for me. So creating opportunities for others to grow, creating spaces for others to come together. When I was president of the Alpha Boston chapter many years ago, it was really about curating experiences and curating events that brought people from all angles and all lenses together to build that community. And so I was very proud of the role and everything I was able to accomplish through that role there. I did the same thing when I was at Simmons, when I was a student, but then also when I was the president of the Simmons Association Alumni Executive Board. And same thing, right? How do we bring in more alumni from different majors, from different classes, from grad schools? Let's create this cohesive community that we can collaborate and share our experiences. Even though we were in different spaces, right? We can still come together and talk about our experiences together. So building community has been something that was instilled in me from a very young age. My parents were community organizers here in Boston. My parents were part of the Dominican festivals here in Boston. And so being able to see them bring that community together and do so much for them sort of gave me this sense of, well, Enna, if you don't see something and you see that you can build it, then you should, right? Whenever I attended conferences on the technology side, I would say, hey, is there someone else that's Latina here? And then a few of us would say, yeah, I'm Latina. And then we'd be like, oh, well, let's meet up. Let's get together because we need to meet up so that we know that there's more Latinos in this space. That's how I built community, by making sure that I showed up every single day, authentically as I am. I am proud Puerto Rican, proud Dominican, proud Bostonian. And I show up with that authentically everywhere I go.
Almost every guest I've had on the podcast, Enna, has shared those same sentiments. And it's really remarkable to reflect on that, honestly. The authenticity, the genuineness, the servant leadership mentality, like I'm here to serve, I'm here as a leader, their success is your success, right? The success of the people that you bring on to the community, as you see them grow, to your point earlier, that you invested heavily in the professional development of your team to the point where you were happy with, being made redundant, right? That is something that is, at least in my world, I see less and less of that. So it's really nice to see that we still have that spirit, and we want to be able to share that worldview and that mindset with others that are in similar positions of influence, where they have that ability to really nurture and cultivate those communities to make them really successful. As we kind of wind down the podcast episode, Enna, I would love to understand what's in store for you coming up in the next year, let's say 2 years. What are you most excited about? What types of projects are you sharing or putting your time into, I should say, and how can listeners potentially get involved? We have a lot of people listening in that are from the Boston area.
Thank you for that. I've launched my consulting company, EJ Consulting Group, and through EJ Consulting Group, I have several pillars that I'm focusing on. For those that know me, I continue to do my keynote speaking engagements, so always looking for spaces where I can share my story of empowerment, encouragement, and just inspiring others. Continuing to do my speaking engagements, as well as I've launched a new series of events. It's called the Coaching Experience. Something that I've always felt was needed was an opportunity for mid to senior professionals or just business leaders, small business owners who didn't quite know how to find that right coach for them to come to a place where they can actually find a coach. And so the coaching experience is something that we're hoping to, over the next 3 years, to continue to grow and to have it go. We host this in many different cities. So if you're someone in a city that is looking to host a coaching event, certainly reach out to me. You can connect with me at my website, ennajimenez.com, or of course on LinkedIn, Instagram. But the coaching experience is meant to be an opportunity for coaches who may have not, these are your up and coming coaches who are sort of mid and through their business, who are looking to connect with more potential clients, right? And so this will be an opportunity for you to connect with attendees. And then this is also an opportunity for attendees who are not sure, who's a good coach for me? Right? What are these different types of coaches? There's life coaches, health coaches, wellness coaches, there's grief coaches. There's so many different, of course, you got the traditional leadership, executive, career coaching, right? But there's so much out there. And so here you get to come and experience a real live coaching experience. So definitely will be doing more of that over the next few years, as well as continuing to expand my consulting business, helping organizations from a corporate sponsorship, creating strategies around how to connect with corporations, how to build sponsorship packages, how to connect with others that may want to know more about your nonprofit, continuing to do more consulting around strategic quality assurance work as well. So that is a mouthful. There's a lot that I'm doing. I will say that in the next 2 years, I should have launched another book. I have several books that I've launched in the past. My last book is Extraordinary Latinas. You can find that on my website as well, ennajimenez.com. But hopefully in the next 2 years, I should have another book as well.
That's a lot to look forward to, Enna, and I can't wait to follow you on your journey. I will definitely include all those links in the show notes as well, so our listeners can find you and follow your work. It was a genuine pleasure having you on the show, Enna. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Farhan. I appreciate the opportunity.